Welcome into the Illini Inquirer podcast. Jeremy Werner, Joey Wagner live here at Memorial Stadium, where Illinois ends a two-game slide with a win, 23-17 over Florida Atlantic. But boy, this one was closer than comfort for Illinois, get down 10-0. And the way I look at this, Joey, it was kind of a weird game in that there are a lot of things that will lose you games in the Big Ten based on what they played today. O-line play concerning, turnovers, more of them, penalties, failing to finish drives. But there are also some really encouraging signs, including your quarterback, your freshman stepping up in a big way, plus you overcame a 10-0 deficit in the first quarter. But I'll say this has not yet looked like a definite bowl team, and I don't think today is going to make everyone go, oh, yeah, everything is fixed. This is supposed to be a get-right game. I don't know if they got right, but they did get a win.
Yeah, I don't think they got wrong either. So, what's the balance? Honestly, I don't know. We thought this was going to be a bigger spread by the end of the game. We thought Illinois was going to be able to kind of assert itself in the trenches. That really didn't hold true. We can get to that later. I guess in not every sense it didn't hold true. I don't know that you leave this feeling better or worse than you came into this, but they needed it. Or they needed a loss here, and it's chaos, right? But yeah, I don't know that they fully got right, and I don't know if it's concerning, but if you're Illinois, you would have liked to really kind of put it all together there.
Yeah, and I talked to Brett. I asked Brett Bielema about that. Like, nothing has come easy yet for this team. What do you think of your team going into 8 straight Big Ten games over the next 9 weeks? Here's what he had to say.
We lost some good players a year ago, but we lost some good voices. Obviously the draft takes guys all the time, but sometimes those voices in critical moments, those leadership things are things that only get tested through fire, right? And I've heard more guys talk this week. I heard Isaiah Adams talk. I heard some of the defensive guys that weren't guys that spoke in the past speak up and say things. Have a couple guys get chesty with each other on the sideline today, which is good, right? I think anytime you have people that are pushing each other, iron sharpens iron, and I think that's a positive thing. But I like where this group is at. I thought our special teams, David Alano, you guys have seen his leg a little bit, but he's got a big leg, and to come in and have that kickoff responsibility was huge. Caleb obviously struggled with the one PAT, but went back right with him on that field goal, and that was good to see him hit that one. But I think we got a lot of depth. I don't know if anything's going to be pretty with this crew, but I think they're going to play tough, gritty football. There was a couple some fouls that went against us. We got to clean up and get on top of it. But I thought they played a pretty clean game.
Yeah, and that's fine. Like, not playing pretty for me, Joe, is kind of what we expected out of this team. We expected the strength to be in the trenches and figure it out, the skill players as they go along. And Illinois did have 500-plus yards. There were some pretty offensive plays, yet FAU was within 6 at the end of this game with 4 minutes to go. Illinois able to milk it away. But the fact that, you're 6 points better than Florida Atlantic is concerning going into Big Ten play. The fact that they came back, found a way to win. And the number one storyline coming into this game was how would Luke Altmyer respond? He responded in a big way. I thought he was fantastic. I know the competition level wasn't as high as what he's seen so far this year, but to throw for 303 yards, a passing touchdown, no interceptions, that rushing touchdown ended up big. He made some big plays. That Griffin Moore flea flicker, he avoided pressure. He was trying to avoid pressure a lot today, given some offensive line struggles. And he said, Brett Bielema called him right Saturday, said, you're still the starter. You're still a guy. I think that mattered a lot to him. We'll have a story on Luke Altmyer later today. But Barry Loney moving to the sideline in part to just, be able to look Luke Altmyer in the eye and calm him down a little bit. The coaching staff did a really good job with Luke, and I think Luke just showed a lot of mental toughness, bouncing back from the worst game of his life. And right now, Penn State is the outlier, right? I know that's the best defense you play. It might be the best defense you play all year. Minnesota's pretty good, but that might be the best defense you play all year. And Luke Altmyer has been a huge bright spot in 3 or 4 games so far.
Yeah, I think we need to step back and just hear what we're saying when we say that the coaching staff did X, Y, and Z for Luke. I don't want to paint this as Luke's the guy who needs all of this stuff to happen after a bad game or things don't go his way. And I know that's not what you're saying, but I think it's worth reinforcing. The thing is you still 4 picks in a game and your 4th start ever like that. You kind of had a rocky road at Ole Miss, right? So I think that all of that stuff factors into calling him on Saturday night and for his teammates to kind of show like, hey, it's all good. It's all good. Like, let's move on. And I think that helped him. Like you could tell, I know you spent a little more time with him today, Jeremy, than I did, but you could tell like that stuff matters. And when he talked about it, yeah, I'm still getting all these reps. I'm still kind of basically admit like, yeah, I've not done this a lot. Right. And it's not a earth-shattering admission. He hasn't done this a lot. So I think to be able to quickly turn the page like that, and I wondered coming in, was it going to be like a lot of short kind of intermediate passes just to let him see a couple go from his hand to a receiver's hand? And they dialed up some stuff for him, and the offensive line didn't help him a lot in a lot of ways. And he showed some poise and some that competitiveness to go out and make some of those plays and kind of turn that page a little bit. I thought that was a really, really important thing.
If we're sticking with some positive Joeys, Tyler Strain got hurt at one point in this game. Taz Nicholson did not play in the second half. Brett Bielema said those guys should be back, so it doesn't sound like anything too serious for those guys. I think Taz Nicholson's been playing really well since he stopped penalties, right? Like since they stopped the penalties. But to have Zach Toby come in and have 3 pass breakups and really shut down his side of the field, especially in the red zone, and Sabor Kareem to come in and play in that dime package. And then we'll get into some of the other freshmen here. Aiden Lawfrey making a big impact, that big 20-yard run, then a 2-yard touchdown. Caden Fagan coming in and helping them. Malik Elzy got his time. 2 straight drops, was not very positive. That's part of why true freshmen struggle to get some of the trust from their staff. But to see those guys step up and give you some meaningful, significant plays, Joey, was big for this team. And I saw our boy Ryan Easterling tweet that there's a semi-youth movement with the team. I think that you just see – there is talent there. Like this staff is recruiting some talent. There's some areas they need to recruit more talent. We'll get into that here with some of the negatives, but some of those young, highly ranked DBs, Zach Toby was a big flip from North Carolina. We know Malik Elzy and Caden Fagan were. Sabor Kareem, 4-star composite guy, one of my favorite guys in the class. Those guys really shined today and showed their talent, their length, their size, their athleticism.
Yeah, I think it also gives you look, there's been times, even really last year at certain positions and certainly much further back that, someone would say, oh, so-and-so is struggling, bench them. And you're like, okay, who? Like, who's a better alternative? And I'm not saying Toby and Kareem are better alternatives necessarily, but to go out there and hold their own maybe gives that coaching staff trust. If a player's struggling, then, hey, we got somebody ready to go, or an injury. I mean, we've seen those pile up now in the secondary in the safety room this year and a little bit today, obviously, at corner, though those don't look long-term. I think it gives you more options, and it gives you more playable guys in the heat of moments that can help, and they're going to struggle, right? I don't think any of us think Zachary Toby in his next rep isn't, he might face moments of struggle because that's what freshmen do, and it's hard to do this as a freshman. But that was an encouraging sign, and you look at a guy like Caden Fagan, redshirt freshman Aiden Lawfrey, but he hasn't played, right? It's not like he got his 4 games really. So I think there were some encouraging signs with those guys, just different options. Different options if a guy's struggling out in one game. That doesn't mean a forever bench. But we've seen Josh McCray, and he had a good game today, but not necessarily going in. Like if they're struggling in a game, then try something, maybe a little more confidence to try something different.
Also, she mentioned David Alano getting in on kickoffs. So Caleb Griffin struggled a little bit. The staff showed Caleb Griffin some confidence after missing the extra point, and he came through with a big 44-yard field goal. But it felt like if he was missing that, David Alano might come in as well. Let's get to some of the real big concerns here, Joey, and it has to be the offensive line, particularly the right side of the offensive line. Isaiah Adams, I think, is a better guard than the tackle. I think that's showing up. I don't like pointing out one guy, but Zy Chrysler continues to really struggle. Like it is apparent to anybody watching these games, even in the run game. Maybe he got better in the second half, and certainly Illinois was better in the second half. But the first half, he really struggled in the run blocking, had a really bad holding penalty that wiped out that great Luke Altmyer touchdown pass to Pat Bryant. It was critical. That's a critical penalty. But that right side needs to get right. They are struggling. I was kind of shocked that Jordan Slaughter didn't come in and relieve Chrysler at one point, but the offensive line was not good in the first half, especially run blocking was my biggest concern. There certainly were some pass things. They gave up that sack late in the half that just can't happen. You were close to getting points there. But this offensive line has not been nearly as good as you got. They'll probably get another D grade from me. They've gotten that or around that in every game so far this year. The offensive line is really underwhelmed. And going into Big Ten play, Dominic pointed out, Iowa's probably the best defense they will play remaining. I think Penn State and Iowa are those two. It's going to get a lot harder on that defensive front. So it was encouraging in the second half. You're able to run the ball 8.3 yards per carry, but in the first half, only getting 2.4 yards per carry. That's not the identity of this team, and it's why they continue to get down early. 10-0 deficit here early, Joey. And part of that's what you weren't able to get points on that first drive. I would have kicked the field goal on 4th and 3, but just not able to sustain drives because the offensive line struggles for the most part.
Yeah, it's the same thing today. And the thing I thought that was interesting today was we had seen previously Jordan Slaughter come in for Zy Chrysler in kind of those moments, like a drive here, a drive there. We saw him come in for Josh Geske today, and notably not Zy Chrysler. So I just wonder, was Illinois is there like a confidence rebuilding thing they're trying to do with him to let him go out there and get through those reps and kind of work through it at a position he's more familiar with? I don't know, but I mean, you can't continue to do that as you go into the Big Ten, the meat of the Big Ten schedule here. So I don't know. What's the answer there? Because I'm with you. It looked like Isaiah Adams is a better guard. And I'm curious. I mean, we'll talk to Bart Miller on Wednesday. What's the actual transition from going from that left side where he's played his whole collegiate Big Ten career, right, and going over to the right side? That's not an excuse, but I don't know what those are. You and I didn't play offensive line, Jeremy, on the Big Ten. But what are your options, right? Like, I think Jordan Slaughter is somebody who's should be a very, very loud and present option for you at the guard spot. Is Hunter Whiteneck a guy? Is Zach Barlev a guy? I thought it was interesting that we didn't see the rotations this game that we usually had.
Yeah, I was just shocked in the trust they had in Chrysler and not giving Slaughter maybe even a series. I'm not saying just completely bench Chrysler because he does have good moments, but he struggled this year. So I'm interested to see where they go from here with that because it's got to get better. Brett Bielema mentioned it. Like, we got to protect our quarterback better. But for me, it's the run game struggling to get going. Yeah. They got going in the second half. I'm interested to watch film there. But that's something that you really struggle to fix in recruiting right away. Brett Bielema mentioned it 2 years ago going into the Penn State game. There's a big void. Well, Zy Chrysler and Isaiah Adams have stepped in the void. Desmond Schuster is not available yet. We need to follow up on him, by the way. But yeah, like those guys, they had to go the JUCO route, and they're developing some of those guys. But clear, they think Zy Chrysler is one of their best 5 linemen by far. But that's a concern because you got to get better up front if you're Illinois. The way that this team's supposed to play and the way Luke Altmyer has played, despite this poor offensive line play or subpar offensive line play, is encouraging. But you just wonder what he could be if he was just protected consistently and they could establish the run game consistently.
Yeah, it's been a really good thing for Illinois that Luke Altmyer is as mobile as we've seen him be, because if not, then some of those sacks probably pile up. The strip sack, he probably could have gotten rid of it a little earlier before that strip sack comes. But yeah, that's my biggest concern about this football team right now is the offensive line. I wouldn't have believed it if you told me that in July, or really even August. But it's clunky. It's really clunky. And I wondered what it was going to look like with the full week. I also thought it was interesting that they moved when they made that switch ahead of Penn State with Adams and Chrysler and Geske. That happened on a Wednesday. So, I mean, did they go into Tuesday wanting to see if they could work on it and not? And so you thought, okay, a whole week, what's it going to look like? And it didn't look much better, right? It truly didn't look better. The second half, obviously, as you mentioned, they were able to get going a little bit on the ground, and that's what this team is. That's what this team needs to be, is a team that can pick up some of those yards on the ground. And it's not all on the line. There's some burst. I know we talked during the game, the first half, the running backs could have shown a little bit more burst at certain times, but the offensive line didn't set them up for success a lot of the time in that first half, and it put Illinois in a hole.
I was texting with Jay Lehman during the game, and one of the things is missed blocks, missed tackles. LaJonte Wester got going. He's the one guy I kept saying, this is the guy you got to guard. And he's a phenomenal player. They kept him from going off, with these big touchdown, which is fine, but he really got going. It's just these self-inflicted, these penalties, Joey. like it corrected it last week on the defense, but the penalties really hurt them again today. The Chrysler one really hurt. These are the things you got to eliminate if you're going to win Big Ten games, because if they play like this against Purdue, they'll lose, especially on the road. They play this way against Nebraska, they could lose. Like they got to clean that stuff up. The turnovers and penalties. That the Hank Beatty fumble was a crusher. The strip sack. I know he was sacked, but that was 4 seconds in the pocket for a call. He's got to get rid of the ball or run. Those are the things you got to take out of your game, and you got to learn from. You just can't sit in the pocket that long. You got to feel it, and you got to escape. So those are things they definitely have to clean up.
Yeah, they do, and I'm fascinated to see what that looks like going into Purdue. And I don't know. I just want to, like, someone's asked about basically all the redshirt freshmen, offensive linemen. I mean, I get it, right? Like, I understand, but at the same time, like, they haven't played a single game. They're still redshirt freshmen. In an ideal world, you don't necessarily care to have that. Do you try it? I mean, is that a button you try? I don't know. We don't see practice. I think Whiteneck is close. I think he's closer than anybody else in that conversation, but there's still,
for us, it's Slaughter. Like, I just didn't understand why he didn't play.
That's
more.
The one for me.
Barlev a little bit, or Whiteneck. I thought we might see a little bit of that just to get a glimpse, because I thought your guy was struggling enough, or your guys were struggling enough, that you might want to see somebody else at guard. Tackle's a problem. Like, I think it's going to be a problem. I don't think Isaiah Adams is a great tackle. I think those guys need some chip help. But, I mean, tackles are going to give up some sacks probably at some point. They're going to get beat every once in a while. But Pearl and Adams have not been as good as we expected. I don't know if they've really helped their NFL draft stock so far, so those guys have to improve as well. But for me, it's really that interior you got to clean up. Like, Kreutz has been really consistent. But you got to get better at those experienced guys. You got to get more out of.
You do. I mean, I thought Adams was fine at guard. Fine. I mean, not perfect, right? I don't know that he was necessarily exactly like sending a stock to the moon at guard, but I thought he was fine, and I just looks like a guy who doesn't have a lot of right tackle reps, and I think that's a problem. Geske's been pretty up and down, right? We've talked about everybody but him. He's been pretty up and down as well. Kreutz has been pretty stable for you, man, and that's the biggest question, right? We had all offseason center. That guy's been about your most stable offensive lineman through 4 games.
Yeah. All right, let's dive into some of these questions our guy Isaac Gambros has, and we'll dive into some listener questions as well. But let's hear from some of our sponsors first.
Home Field. They are a premium collegiate apparel brand based in Indianapolis. They emphasize their commitment to creating incredibly comfortable, officially licensed apparel with vintage college designs. They feature a growing collection of over 150 plus colleges to choose from, including, of course, the University of Illinois. Home Field designs are super unique, guys, because they delve into the archives and history of each school, including Illinois, and these unique logos and iconic moments create thoughtfully designed apparel. So if you go to homefieldapparel.com, you can see the 80s Illini football helmet that so many like, Flying Illini logo, the Illinois basketball logo from the 2004-2005 Illini team. The script Illini is there. And you guys, these are the most comfortable shirts. And that's what I love about Home Field Apparel. You get the comfort, but you also get authenticity and nostalgia. So I'm telling you guys, give their site a look. It's not the typical Illinois gear you usually see. You can find them at homefieldapparel.com, where you can see their collection of colleges available. And guess what? Our listeners at Illini Inquirer get 15% off their first order with discount code Illini23. Again, 15% off your first order at homefieldapparel.com with discount code Illini23. So, as you go to Illinois football games, get ready for the Illinois basketball season, Home Field Apparel is the perfect apparel to get you ready for the upcoming season. So check them out at homefieldapparel.com.
All right, let's get to some Isaac Ambrose, our producer's questions that he has for us every game. One word to define this game, Joey. Mine would be struggle. Like, nothing's coming easy for this team. And they put themselves behind the 8 ball here. And just even the struggle to put them away. Illinois was by far the better team for the final 3 quarters, right? Like, they outgained FAU like 400 to 200 over the last 3 quarters. They just couldn't put them away. And I just think, not being able to sustain those drives offensively, get off the field defensively on some of those 3rd downs late in the game, just felt like a big struggle against Florida Atlantic from the American Athletic Conference.
Yeah, I would say rocky. I mean, it was rocky. There were times that the offense had moments, you're like, okay, that looks good. The defense, I thought, really, really bailed out Illinois in critical times down in that red zone after turnovers. I mean, the defense played pretty well at stretches, but we just haven't seen sustained, right? Like, it's not just this game. It's all 4 games. You haven't seen this team. Like, offensively, has there been a quarter, Jeremy, at all this year, quarter and a half, that you really felt like they were humming along? I don't feel like I remember much of those.
Second quarter today was pretty good. They got that tempo going. Altmyer was dealing. If it weren't for those Malik Elzy drops, it felt like they could have scored 20 in that second quarter. In the third quarter, they were pretty decent, but yeah, that's about as good as they've looked. But sustain that, get into the fourth quarter and score. We can bring up the Caden Fagan. I would have scored. I think some gamblers would appreciate if he would have scored. I guess he still would have been, still wouldn't have made the teaser bet he still would have gotten for the spread. But I would have rather just scored because one fumble on the kneel down and maybe you're giving FAU a chance to win the game. I would have been concerned about that. But you weren't able to sustain that. And that's what you're looking for at some point. But hey, 4-minute drive at the end was really encouraging. And we got to mention Josh McCray. Nice bounce back performance from him. Especially, you saw where Josh McCray's value is. Late in games, wearing on opponents, 73 yards on 14 carries, 5 yards a pop. I thought he was the best back in the first quarter, first half as well. Reggie Love got that one big run, but I thought he looked a little hesitant. Obviously, Fagan and Aiden Lawfrey got involved in the second half, but I thought McCray looked like the bell cow that Bielema was so excited about. Let's see if he can carry that over in the Big Ten play.
Yeah, he also had a couple catches I thought that moved the chains and were important to just keeping some of that offense going there. I was encouraged by Josh McCray, and I don't think I had that on my bingo board coming into this game, just given what we had seen for those first 3 games. But yeah, I'm Fagan. Whatever. I get it.
You won the game. You won the game.
Yeah. But yeah, man, I feel like we just haven't someone laborious. Like sometimes watching this just
laborious.
That's a good word. I mean, that's a
great word.
Good word. I should save that one.
Illini star of the game. I mean, it's got to be Luke Altmyer.
Yeah, it's Luke. I don't even know that I have. I almost thought Isaiah Williams because I thought his
How about
ability.
That Moss?
He made people miss too. Like one of his catches, I think he got up to 14 yards and he made a lot of people miss after the play. But it's Luke Altmyer for, I don't know, maybe we're falling in love with the narrative, but I also thought he played a pretty darn good game of football.
And if he wouldn't have wiped out, if Chrysler's penalty didn't wipe out, I mean, that was one of the prettiest throws I've seen the Illini quarterback make on that Pat Bryant one. Being able to dodge a defender on that Griffin Moore, that flea flicker looked like it was doomed. And then Luke Altmyer makes a defender miss and makes that throw. Makes a great throw to Tip Ryman. How about the tight ends getting involved a little bit today? They're some of your most consistent pass catchers. So actually thought Lunny had a pretty decent game today. To be honest,
don't say that too loud.
I know. I thought, Altmyer missed a couple throws to Isaiah Williams deep too, right? Like the deep shots look good. Maybe that's going to be more difficult in Big Ten play, but Purdue's been giving up some big plays. Nebraska can give up some big plays. So I thought it was encouraging your passing game in particular. Is there anybody else? Like Zach Toby would be in my – if we did a 3 stars, Zach Toby might be my 3rd star.
Yeah, Toby.
Keith Randolph too.
Keith Randolph had the sack.
Tackles for loss too.
Part of me wants to give it to McCray because I thought he was so critical down the stretch. But to me, it's Toby. Toby is somebody that I was really, really impressed by him. And remember he came in and you and I were like, what in the world's going on here? And he held up really well.
All right. Offensive and defensive letter grades.
I'm going to start with offense. C.
It's so weird. They had 500 yards, but he only had 23 points.
C plus? C? I feel like a C is fine.
It's a game you wanted a B plus or an A against Florida Atlantic, right? So offensive line, I think, really drags that down. Some drops, the penalty, wiping out a touchdown. I don't think we change it if Caden Fagan goes in for a touchdown and they get 30. So, like, I consider them getting 30. So, yeah, I would say, like, C plus.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And because it should have been more, right? It's just I still have these notes. And it just drives at 3 and outs. I mean, it just drives that nothing worked at all. And that's concerning.
Turnovers.
The turnovers are getting
in Florida Atlantic territory. How would you grade the defense?
B?
Yeah, because they were, again, put in terrible situations.
They were, and that FAU drive at the end was like that 97-yard drive was, I mean, you just don't want to see that, right on at home against a team that you just look better than in most aspects. But they also bailed them out. It's not like they were put in bad situations and bailed them out. FAU helped with that. Some penalties, some disastrous experiences in the red zone didn't help them. But yeah, I think B is fine because, sorry, Jeremy, I know you had a grade here. LeJohntay Wester is the guy that you have to cover, and the guy comes up with 13 catches for 137 yards and a touchdown.
Like that is lead the country in yards, like receiving yards. I mean, he's 3 straight 100-yard games. He's the only guy I watched on film. And McCammon came back, and he's a really good player. They're running back. He didn't get going until late in the game, but Wester was the one guy, and they went man to man a lot, especially when those freshmen came in, just to make it easier on them. But Wester got open, man, and Xavier Scott, Tyler Strange struggled a little bit at times, but they battled. Just that kid's good. Kid's really, really good. FAU's first 2 scoring drives are 24 yards after the strip sack, and they got a field goal out of it. That's a win for the defense. 38 yards after a long punt return and Hugh Robertson's late hit. Hugh, tone it down there, buddy. Those, you don't want to give up that 19-yard touchdown to Wester, but that's not a terrible defensive performance given what they were given. And then they had 3 straight stops inside the red zone. So kudos to them. Turn the lights out on you, Joey?
I don't know what happened. I've been kicked out of places before.
You need to get up and change it. That's fine. You look good, though.
Also, I do want to say, like, someone's talking about the third down defense. FAU was 6 of 17. We've seen
late in the game. They were 2 of 10 at one point. It was late in the game, though. But, yeah, that was a bad drive. You can't give up a 90 – I mean, Hugh Robertson pins him at the 3, and you give up a 13-play, 97-yard drive. Not good.
No, that punt should have been, for all intents and purposes, the end, right?
Yeah. All right. So did we give them a B, the defense?
I think that's pretty fair.
They stopped the run for the most part, and not a lot of big plays for Florida Atlantic until probably the end of the game. And boy, you saw Jeremiah Warren, Alex Bray playing on the defensive line. I think that defensive line was worn out, but the defensive line didn't get a lot of sacks. One of the Gabe Ackus sacks got wiped out because of a penalty. But I thought the defensive front shut down the run, and FAU was getting the ball out quick just to negate Illinois' pass rush.
Yeah, and I wonder what that's going to mean moving forward, because I think that's the answer. We've seen that be what teams try to do against Illinois, so I'm curious what's the way to counter that, because I don't think that's the last time they're going to see that.
This is a tough question from our boy Isaac.
Come on, Isaac.
What percentage of the offensive struggles are play calling? What percent is on the players? I thought the play calling was pretty good today, to be honest with you. Like I thought they had a lot of opportunities down the field. He wanted to establish the run game, and his offensive line really struggled to execute in the run game. I thought the running backs really struggled early in the game. I thought Reggie Love looked hesitant. Josh McCray had a solid start, but Mike Elsley drops 2 balls. Like I thought today was more execution than play calling.
Yeah, and I know we talked about the play call that we kind of were like, what? Was the Hank Beatty catch and very quick fumble that maybe you just want to run that. But it did seem to me like it was clear they didn't really – it is somewhere in the stretch in the third quarter, they didn't feel like they really trusted their run game. And they were basically doing passes that were extension of runs. And I thought that was a pretty telling thing as well.
Most underperforming unit of the game, Isaac asked.
It's the offensive line. Yeah.
Most encouraging outside of quarterback? Would you go DB or tight end there? Or running back?
Running back came to mind for me. But you're kind of balancing all of this against like playing FAU, a team that had been dismantled. But I thought Aiden Lawfrey showed some – like I liked what I saw from him in those few carries. Josh McCray showed some bursts. Like I'll give running back. Like I think that's fine. They look better than I thought.
Biggest play of the game / momentum shift. Are we going the Griffin Moore flea flicker when everything was looking lost and the panic alarm is sounding in Champaign?
I can't see my notes.
Are we going the wheel route to tip Ryman to be like, okay, they're going to take the lead, they'll be fine, or they'll tie it? Or is it the Isaiah Williams bail us out of a bad drive on 3rd and long, moss the guy? I think it's one of those big – the fact that they got big plays today, Joey, they're 4 of their 5 longest plays of the season came today. Part of that's probably opponent, but 3 passes of 40 yards, all the longest plays of the season in the past game, and then Reggie Love with a 61-yard run.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Isaiah Williams play. They had just come off a sack. It's 3rd and 13. At this point, you're up by 3. It was 13-10 at that point in the third quarter. Caleb Griffin had missed the point after at a wasn't it 13-10? Oh God,
I think it was 14-10, but yeah,
14-10. Yeah, and then he missed the point after on that one. So it's 14-10. You go 45 yards, and you get a face mask on top of it. You move 60 yards on that play, then ultimately set up the Aiden Lawfrey 15-yard run, 3-yard touchdown. I thought it was the Isaiah Williams play.
Great question by Isaac. Most notable thing Bielema said post-game.
I thought it was more on the radio because we listened to his radio call or his radio interview before. Thought it was about getting young guys the ball, getting young faces in there, getting them the ball. And then an honorable mention, I don't want to step on you because maybe this might be yours, is he said, we got to protect our quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's always kind of been this dance around of it. It's clear that they need to protect the quarterback.
Yeah. I thought the other part that was interesting was just, I asked him, like, talk about Luke Altmyer, and he volunteered that he called Luke and reassured him. It was clear that he was still the starter. That's what he meant by it. But I followed up, and he did share, like, this was obviously a tough week, but I wanted him to know that we believed in him, and we just had to correct things. He said, but I told him we can't do these certain things. And the fact that Luke Altmyer, I think, really took that to heart. And he said it was really uplifting when he got that call from Bielema. So I thought those things were really interesting. But yeah, I think when you hit on the offensive line's a problem, and Brett Bielema, I think, has basically said that the last couple of weeks. They got to fix that. And I'm interested to see if Bart Miller and Barry Loney and Brett Bielema get together and say, do we got to switch this up again? I don't think you want to keep switching this stuff, but I think you got to get some more guys in there, see if somebody can give you some competition and see if anybody's better.
Yeah, feels like a bye week coming after Nebraska is a long time, right? Because ideally you would have one, you're going into the 5th game, maybe you get one more, and you go into a bye week and you can tinker. So I think that maybe factors in, but I also don't think you want musical chairs at offensive line. But at some point, that choice might be made for you.
Ed S., you didn't rate the special teams. Gave up some returns today.
Yeah, haven't seen that in a while.
Missed an extra point. Probably a D, to be honest. I mean, Hugh was pretty good. David Alano was good on kickoffs. But the returns that they had and the missed extra point, those are – I mean, that missed extra point could have come up huge. What if Florida Atlantic scores a tying touchdown and then just needs an extra point to win? That would have been terrible.
Yeah, I agree. And we have kind of a running joke that the Hugh Robertson over-under number we set every week is low. Time to raise that back up. He looked much better today, but the rest of it just wasn't what we had seen. For a unit that I think outside of last week with Hugh Robertson had been a plus this year with Robbie Disher leading the way there. And the return yardage was concerning.
Injury updates, Taz Nicholson, don't know what it was. Brett Bielema said he should be back by Tuesday. I was thinking like, does that mean concussion if he left the game? But Brett Bielema said he should be back. Tyler Strain, I guess the medical guys took him out, so that always, I think, concussion. Tyler Strain, he came back in the game, right?
He did, yeah. It didn't sound like he was serious either.
And then Reggie Love had
like a mild ankle sprain.
Sprain.
Obviously, we'll follow up with those on Monday. I didn't get the sense out of that press conference that we're going to have news on Monday of long-standing injuries.
Lon Engel. So happy for the local kids that stepped up there. Shout out to Fagan, Lafferty, Barnes, and Moore. Yeah, Central Illinois showed up in this game. Griffin Moore getting involved in the passing game, I think is really good, and getting Tip Ryman involved there too. But so it was good to have those local products shine.
It was, yeah. And we talked to Aiden Lawfrey after. That was a big moment for him. The video's up on a YouTube channel. You can hear it in his voice. Remember, he's battled injuries. He hasn't scored. Our friend Brett Behrens at WCIA made a good point to him. It's been a few years since that guy has been in the end zone, and it really mattered a lot for him today to get in there. And those 2 runs he made, Jeremy, were really – he showed burst. He showed wiggle. Those were like pretty encouraging runs from a guy that we had kind of overlooked in talking about Caden Fagan, and obviously Reggie Love, and can Josh McCray bounce back. I thought he looked pretty encouraging, all things considered.
Well, we didn't overlook him in the offseason.
Right.
It's just he hasn't played a lot to this point. But, like, we wondered with Chase Brown gone, who's the explosive guy? Could Reggie Love be that? He's got the one run, but he always seems like he's one kind of missed tackle away from that big one. But Aiden Lawfrey showed on that sweep, and FAU probably should have had that scout. I think Purdue will. That when Aiden Lawfrey's in the game, probably go more outside zone. But they just have not done a lot of outside zone because they don't have the burst to get the edge. And I think Lawfrey at least showed that burst. So got 4 running backs that they feel like can play at least. It's just can they all combine together for another 200-yard game? That's what I'm interested to see. Fett says, even Fagan not scoring at the end. What the? That's not a killer mentality. That's an everybody gets a trophy mentality. Hated that. They ended up winning. That's what Brett Bielema was going to do. I would have rather scored the touchdown. Like that 6, having 6 instead of 7 to me, I just would have scored that touchdown. I know FAU wanted to. That's why Fagan had that huge running lane. They're going to let him score, but I'd just rather be up 13 with 40-something seconds left. But that's me.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. It almost kind of feels like a kid maybe who overthought a little bit too. Like, okay, I know this is scenarios. Like, we're taught to go down. It worked out okay, right? It would have taken a lot of chaos probably either way for them to ultimately lose that game. It would have been cool for him to get in the end zone. But, it is what it is. Also, real quick, is Jordan Anderson, the running back, injured? Yes, he's out for the season with his ACL, torn ACL.
What's up, Dom? How you doing, man?
Not well,
guys, we haven't played a complete game yet this season. Absolutely not.
I don't think we're pretending otherwise.
No. This team has not looked like I said it at the beginning of the show. This team does not look like a no-doubt bowl team, which is really concerning. And the only reason you have, based on what they've done so far, is you play in the Big Ten West and you got Indiana. Like outside of Iowa and I think Maryland, like those are the games that scare me right now, really, for this team. But
Wisconsin's bubbling. They're a team that could be scary by the time they circle up.
But I think Minnesota beats you by 2 touchdowns right now with the way you're playing. That's a team that doesn't beat itself. It's not sexy whatsoever, but they just play good football, kind of like Illinois did last year. We know what Iowa does. Next 2 weeks are huge for this team. Purdue has an extra day of rest. They know you really, really well, their personnel. And then they're not a very good football team. I'll say that. Their defense isn't very good, but your offense isn't very good right now. And then they have a running quarterback in Hudson Card who can really make plays. Nebraska, you got to beat at home on a Friday night. But that's a quick turnaround for you and for them. But still, like, these are 2 monster games coming up for Illinois.
Yeah, because you can really position yourself well in these next 2 weeks, knowing you still got Indiana, you still got Northwestern sitting on the schedule. Also, you got that trip to Maryland coming up right after Nebraska, right? That's not the bye week after Maryland, I want to say, going the end of October. So, yeah, you can position yourself well, but Brett, can I go back really quick? Like the thing that Brett Bielema, Isaac asked is the most notable thing. The more I think about it, and this conversation has gotten me to that point, nothing's going to be pretty. What was a rough draft, kind of a paraphrase of what he said. That might be it. Like, that might be the best way to summarize where this is it's not going to be very pretty for this team. It doesn't appear unless something changes over the course of the next 2-3 weeks.
Which is fine. You just got to stop beating yourself with turnovers and penalties. Like that last year wasn't all that pretty, to be honest with you. Until the end of the season, they didn't beat themselves. They just continue to beat themselves in these games. Great question by Fedigator. Over under 6.5 wins at this point. I scream, take the over early in the season. I would not bet.
It's a good number. It's a good number.
Right now, I'd probably go under.
Yeah, so they're 2-2. And
if they play like this, if they play like the first 4 games, but I think they'll get better, but they haven't gotten a ton better in 4 games.
No, I think the schedule, as we've talked about what's out there, you would think, as we sit now, that you would have 2 with Indiana and Northwestern coming up. So do you have 2 more to get to 6, 3 more really to get to 7? I'd probably take the under.
Nebraska.
I still think it's a bowl. I still think it's a bowl team, though. I still think it's a 6-win team.
Yeah, I would go 6, like 6-6, probably a projection right now. If they win the next 2, you feel a heck of a lot better. Purdue's massive. It's just an unbelievably massive game for Illinois right now. Just going through.
Got any more from Dom?
Yeah. We've got to get better in the transfer portal. I'm watching these other teams in college football, and their offense is like from the 90s compared to Washington and Oregon. We're not even close.
You don't get a new playbook in the transfer portal. You get more talent, but
listen, they had 500 yards today. They had 2 deep passes to Isaiah Williams open that Altmyer just kind of overthrew. I thought there were some good concepts here today. Like, I don't know how you look at those concepts and see those downfield opportunities. Like, I get it. First couple weeks, some of them haven't been there. Your O-line's got to be better. Your playmakers got to get better. If you want to play at that level, like Oregon's been recruiting really well for a long time. Washington or Chris Peterson and the last couple of coaches, like they've been recruiting pretty well. Got to continue to stack those classes, man. And, defense, they got to continue to get more talent. But that's why it was kind of encouraging what we saw from the freshmen today is you see that raw talent, even if they don't know where to be all the time.
Yeah, I think if you want to stand up and scream transfer portal, which is fine. We talked about this on Thursday, Jeremy. I think you look in the trenches. You look at replacing your 2-star defensive lineman. You explore an offensive lineman.
What did I rank? What did I rank 1 and 2 transfer portal needs in the recruiting lounge the other day? Defensive line and offensive line. Like, that's what wins. Like, you got.
I agree. Yeah.
All right, you got anything else, Joey? Before we get out of here, Jasmine says Brandon Henderson is the answer. He can't be worse, and he built for the future.
Illinois is. He did. I think Illinois is about done with the you can't be worse. Like, especially when you're talking a true freshman offensive lineman. Like, here's the thing. I will say, and we stand down there. There's always recruits we're down there talking to. We're watching warm-ups. Brandon Henderson is a large man. Like, that is what NFL players look like when they're 18 years old coming in here. I think he has got a very, very high future. I think that future starts in total next year at left tackle. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I would stand here right now and say an 18-year-old is the answer on the offensive line. Illinois played that game in recent memory, even though I think Brandon Henderson is more talented right now and probably more physically there than like an Alex Palczewski was at 17. But I just don't know that hanging your hat on a freshman offensive lineman to come in and fix all of your woes is the right approach or the best approach.
I agree with you. Let's wrap this up with this. Chris, if Purdue beats us this year, must really question the coaching staff. I think we do a fine job of questioning certain things about the coaching staff, but I will say this, Joey. It's a monster week for both coaching staffs. You already see Purdue fans like, oh, what's going on here with 1-3 start? And really the defense is struggling incredibly for them. They turn it over a lot. They had a tough job taking over from Jeff Brom, who was a good coach. I know some things weren't always pretty there inside the program, but he was a really good coach. So they want to get back on the board. They want to beat Brett Bielema and his former staff, getting a lot of recruiting battles here. And Illinois certainly doesn't want the protege to beat the teacher here in Brett Bielema. So rivalry game, man, and it's been amped up with Ryan Walters and a bunch of Illinois staff members on that side. Yeah,
it's a huge game. When we say question the coaching staff, what do we mean here? Because, like, you know what I mean? Like, we question things about, like, are we talking like a big picture in totality? Is this the right staff? Because I don't think that's fair to do after one game, but I think there are things to question if they lose that game, right? So I don't know. I guess
it's about momentum. It's about program momentum. And this is a big year to sustain that stuff, right? We've talked about it all the time. So I get what they're saying is, for I think fans questioning the staff of are they the ones to get it done, to sustain success. I think that's fair. Like your job now is to beat Big Ten teams.
But I guess my thing is like, so after the Purdue game is the one that we circle like this, that's what I'm saying.
It's all of them.
I think it's in totality, right?
Yeah. It's all these Big Ten games, and we'll look at the end of the season. I don't think one game determines that stuff, but sure. I mean, fans are questioning the staff. We have questions about certain things. The fans question the staff after every play. So I think next week's a big game, though. Like if you want to make a bowl game and sustain success, I think next week is crucial for that.
There's no doubt, and it also builds a little. Like for the first time this season, you have a chance to build some momentum with back-to-back wins and going on the road and getting a Big Ten win. Like you can really start to ideally build something if you can go over there and get that win. And look, you're right, man. There's going to be some bragging rights or recruiting bragging rights, however you want to look at it on the line there. But, yeah, I mean, it's certainly a big game. I don't want to minimize that.
One of the last ones we'll do, Brad. Altmyer needs to run the ball next weekend. Yeah, Purdue struggles to stop the quarterback run. We were in that the last 2 weeks against Syracuse and Garrett Schrader and Tanner Mordecai with a couple of rushing touchdowns. So that's certainly something they have struggled to stop. All right, that'll do for us. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the Illini Inquirer Postgame podcast live here on YouTube. Hit the like button on your way out. We really appreciate it. Hit the subscribe button if you don't subscribe to us already on YouTube, and hit the notifications bell for any of our new videos. You can check out all the postgame. Joey Wagner and I got a long night ahead of us writing, but looking forward to writing some of the stuff that we have from the postgame and some of our takeaways after this, and check it all out at Illini Inquirer. Thanks for listening to the Illini Inquirer podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us, rate us, review us, wherever. Everybody have a great night. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer podcast.